So this is a documentary for my book, and I'll just do lots of sound bites and we can cut them together. Maybe it'll come to something, maybe it won't.
The time's finally here. We've produced over 100 magic books at Vanishing Inc., but after years and years of urging him to do so, he has finally written his own book of material, The Boy Who Cried Magic. What can I say? I've watched my best friend come up with material for years, and it never came out in a book until now. The Boy Who Cried Magic is a collection of all of Andy's best tricks.
There's a quote by Dorothy Parker that I think a lot of authors live by, and it's that I hate to write, but I love having written. And actually, in the case of The Boy Who Cried Magic, that doesn't really feel applicable. Because I found this book kind of cathartic to write. It's essentially my lifetime's work, hopefully my lifetime to date. Hopefully I create a load more tricks from now on. But it was kind of reflective. I got to sit and write over the period of a year or two. I'm thinking about all of these routines that I created and kind of following the journey of those routines. Because when you sit and write and explain a trick, you're not just thinking about the handling and how it should all fit together, but you think about the times where you performed the trick and something interesting happened, or when you performed at a meaningful venue, or for a celebrity or someone important, or just that you got an incredible reaction from it. So you think about those moments, but then you also think about how far the trick has come. You know, I often hear other magicians talk about their tricks as like their children. You know, I could never choose a favorite trick. They're like, it'd be like choosing a favorite child. And I don't feel like these are my children, but I do feel like they're a part of me. You know, they're a part, those tricks have grown over the years as I've grown and changed over the years. And you think back to where they started and how they evolved and how every finesse impacted the trick. Because when you create your own tricks, they don't start as perfect performance pieces, they just start as ideas, and with every little change, they eventually become where they are now. So I really enjoyed writing this book because I got to reflect on how these tricks evolved and I guess how I evolved as a performer too.
In some ways, I have the best point of view for this book because I've been watching Andy perform and perfect this material over many years. So for most people, this is their first glimpse into the material that he's come up with. But I've been watching him devise it and refine it. I've been there watching as he took a couple of years to write the book and the descriptions, get them down to exactly how he wanted them. And then his painstaking, annoying at times, attention to detail in making this book perhaps the most beautiful book on card magic ever produced.
So choosing what tricks to put in a book is actually incredibly difficult. And I find that I work backwards. In this case, I listed pretty much every trick that I do, and then I started to scratch away tricks that I maybe didn't want to publish because it's still being evolved, or just because I didn't feel like it was original enough, or that I still had work to do on the trick. You perform these routines for many years, but it's not until you sit and actually start to write them down that you really learn about them, because it gives you the ability to question every single moment in the routine. Why is that important? Why have I found myself naturally doing that? And actually, perhaps by writing up your routines, that's when you learn the most from them. You could take 100 performances to realize that you're doing a move at the wrong beats, but you could write it down and it's just there glaringly obvious to you. So writing a book like this really takes years to do because you find yourself getting to points where you then want to start reanalyzing it and going back out and performing the trick to see if you found an improvement. And that was certainly the case for me.
The first thing you're going to notice about this book is that it's gorgeous. If you have the deluxe edition, it's doubly gorgeous. It comes in a slipcase, it's a gorgeous color, it's cloth bound, the photos, the descriptions, everything. The second thing you're going to notice is that the material's really practical. This material isn't pie in the sky stuff, it's not magician session stuff. It's mostly workable, polished, refined magic. And the last thing you're going to notice is a passion. The nicest thing that I can say about Andi is that he cares. He's not trying to come up with tricks to sell. He's not trying to come up with tricks to fool magicians. He's not got some ego involved in putting his name on all tricks. If it's in this book, it's because it's worthy of sharing. And this book is filled with the kind of magic I like reading most, and that is smart, deceptive card magic.
Over the last decade, both Andy and Josh have been responsible for the production of so much magic, and it would be ever so easy to be in that position and assume that you just know what works and what doesn't. It's black and white. But what continually impresses me about them both is that they're so receptive to criticism. And I think that's what makes Andy's work in general, and specifically this book, so great. Because he was open to change the whole way through. Right until the very last moment, he was open to change something if he thought it would make the product better. And a story that stands out for me is the deck of cards. If you've purchased the deluxe edition of this book, you receive these two gorgeous decks of cards. And we actually went to Belgium, to the factory, Cartamundi's factory in Belgium, to inspect the process. He wanted to make sure that the deck of cards he was giving you is the deck of cards that he would want to use for the rest of his life. He wanted to create his dream deck. And it was really inspiring to see that level of attention to detail, because it is easy to cut corners in books. If you take a photo and you see a blemish in the corner, the effort required to retake that photo, sometimes you may and over it. But Andi, I cannot think of a single corner he cut. This book has been a labor of love for him in the strongest sense of the words. And I think that shows so incredibly in the final product.
Let's give it up for Lewis, everyone.
I don't know. If I had to think about my favorite trick in the book, I don't think I could pick one, so I'll give you three. His undo cut is in my show every time I work. It's the best false cut shuffle thing there is. I believe that. Red Black to the Future is my favorite of the tricks that Andy's been doing for a million years. I've seen him kill magicians with it. I use it all the time. I built it into my stack because I think so highly of the trick. And in terms of impromptu tricks, Ghost is a really sweet, tight little construction. And this is the thing that you have to know about Andy's magic. I think that if we were to give a fair compliment to Andi, it would be that his magic is refined and really, really detail-oriented. These tricks are great, but the detail brings out a different level of beauty, and I hope you know what I mean by that. Sometimes when you read the very best magic books, the tricks get better because you're noticing decisions, you're noticing details that you may not notice when you watch the trick, but you understand in the construction of how the trick is described.
Choosing a favorite trick is really difficult because actually I have favorite tricks for favorite moments. For example, the Castle Jacks routine is a whole multi-phase routine that I've performed hundreds of times in all sorts of environments, but it's very much a parlor routine for formal shows. And within that routine is a little sequence that I call the Classical Assembly. And that essentially started as an ace assembly. It started with me looking at what the plot of an ace assembly is, and then tearing it apart, which is something I do often when I'm working on routines. I really try and strip them down of all the unnecessary things, or the unnecessary sequences and phases and cards and patter. And once I strip it all down, I find that I've got something completely new and different. And for me, the Classical Assembly has a moment in it that just gets a gasp. When I remove the jacks from the glass and fan them, that really gets gasps from an audience. So that's become my favorite because of that exact moment. It's funny how a 7 or 8 minute routine boils down to just one split second. That fanning of the jacks is what makes it an important moment for me and one of my favorite tricks in the book.
Yeah, the trailer. That was a fun day. When we came up with that, we were on a car journey, and as a joke, I suggested that Andi should do the trailer in one take because his pet peeve is doing multiple takes of things, and he latched onto it. So fast forward 6 months, 8 months, and we're in this vast soundstage in Las Vegas, and we're about to do a trailer in one take. And in case you've never been in front of a camera, something that I'd certainly never appreciated is the simplest things become really difficult. Even talking, even if you're following a script, even if you're doing moves or tricks that you've done hundreds or thousands of times before, under the pressure of lights and a camera, life becomes really hard. And it was stunning to watch Andi glide through this trailer under incredibly difficult circumstances, and he really was set on doing it in one take. We had built-in cut points, we had built-in edit points, but the trailer you see, the trailer you will watch, that genuinely is one take start to finish. And what is so amazing about that is to watch it, you forget what's happening behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, there's a team of people. There's a light rig unlike anything we've seen before. There's a cameraman who's having to replicate the same movements using a Steadicam each time. And of course, the hardest job goes to Andi. He has to get his part right every single time. He has to make sure the moves are flawless. He has to make sure his script is without any imperfections, and he has to make sure he's walking the exact route we've planned. And to top all of that off, we have to do it in 100 degrees heat in a soundstage in Las Vegas. So there were lots of moving parts, lots of challenges, but what came together is something that certainly I look at and am really proud of, and something that Andi definitely should be proud of.
And so, I'm proud to present the first book of my own material, The Boy Who Cried Magic.
Few people in the magic industry, let alone the wider world, have published as many books as Andi has. And that puts a lot of pressure on, because he has to apply the same critiques to his own work that he applies to everyone else's. And it would be all too easy to think that Andi has just sat back as we speak, waiting, looking forward to his book coming out. But I'll bet, if you asked him honestly, I'd say he's really nervous. He doesn't know how this is going to be received. He doesn't know if his peers are going to enjoy this book as much as he hopes. Like, he'll be full of nerves, I think. But I'll tell you this, I can't think of a way that he could have put himself in better stead. This, I'm confident this book is going to be a huge hit.
You'd probably think that after 10 years of running Vanishing Ink and publishing perhaps 100 or more magic books, that I've got all of this figured out. And the truth is I haven't. I've learned a lot along the way about what it takes to publish a magic book, but when you put that into your own work, it kind of all falls apart in many ways, because you start to question whether the style choices that you make are the right choices, whether the tricks you're including are the right tricks. So I present The Boy Who Cried Magic in a way with some trepidation, because this is my first book. I don't get to stand behind the authors. I don't get to be the guy in the background. Instead, I get to share my material and my vision and do it with my design style. My end goal is for this to somehow inspire the magic that you do. And if that's the case, well, I guess there's no greater honor.